Across the world, people have their housing costs taken away as much as half of their income. Have you ever thought of trying to change that? The good news is there is a way. House hacking is real, and we are here to show you how other people just like you have made it happen. Welcome to the House Hacking Podcast. And here is your host, house hacking expert, Andrew Kerr.
Thank you for everyone that's been listening to the show. Your support means so much to us, and we appreciate all the great feedback you've already given us. If you have been enjoying the show so far, there are a couple of ways to help support us. The first is to hit the subscribe button on your podcast platform so you always get the latest episode. And the second way to help is to leave a written review. Those written reviews and 5 stars go a long way in helping support our show and helping other people find our show. Now, for today's episode, we're going to cover a unique style of house hacking that isn't really talked about a lot, or for most folks, it's not even thought of. And it's what we're defining as this work-provided housing house hack. The basic idea with this style of house hacking is having your employer provide you with a living accommodations or a housing allowance. Now, I know what you might be thinking. My work doesn't give me a housing allowance and they never would pay for me. And that's okay. But what we wanted to do is present this style of house hacking for you. That way you can start to think about it in the future. So if you're just in college and you're getting ready to start your first job, maybe this is something you can think about. Or if you're changing jobs, you're moving to a new city or doing a career change, this is an option you can think about and work into your plan. Now, getting a housing allowance is actually more common than we realized. And if you actually listened to last week's episode with David, we slightly hinted at it, and we briefly went over it really quick. As he's in the military, when he was stationed in San Diego, his housing allowance equated to $3,100 a month. And what he did is he used that housing allowance to rent a really large home, and then the extra bedrooms in the home he put out on Airbnb. And what this did is he used that housing allowance to cover all of his rent, and that Airbnb income made him some profit on top of that. So here in season 1, we're actually going to have 3 different case studies on this specific type of house hack. And for today's episode, we tried really hard to find a great and unique case study. And we wanted to have a fun international side to it as well. So our guest, who's going to be on in just a moment, she actually grew up in Ireland, and it's where she got her degree. Then she went to the UK for her fellowship and training, and then she had her first sort of career there teaching. And it was after being sort of frustrated with that high cost of living in the south of London that she decided she needed a change. And what she did is she took a job abroad. And let me tell you, those 8 years working abroad where she had her housing covered for her absolutely changed her financial picture. She ended up now owning properties in multiple different countries, has built up a sizable nest egg, and has this very picture-perfect lifestyle. So with that said, let's bring on today's guest, Sorcha. Well, Sorcha, thanks for coming on. I'm really excited that you're here. How are you doing, and what are you doing right now in life?
Hi there, Andrew. Thank you so much. At the moment, well, greetings from Dubai. I'm calling you. It's our first day back at school. I've just had a week half term, and I've just come back from my travels in Vietnam, and just starting back. The weather's getting cooler, and getting now on the countdown to our next holiday.
Oh, cool. So I'm actually in the States. It's a Sunday, but in Dubai, if I remember right, your typical work week is Sunday through Thursday, right? And then Friday and Saturday is the day off?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
It takes a while to get used to that weekend.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing the call at the end of your long work day and in your evening. So I really appreciate that. All right. So let's just start off. Can you give me a high-level summary of your story? Because I think it's really fascinating, and it's not this like typical house hacking story that we normally hear where, you get roommates or you buy this multifamily property and live in one side and rent the other. So just give us a summary of this, of your story.
Yeah, of course. So I have been an expat teacher for the last 8 years, and we're quite lucky as expat teachers. As part of our package, we are given either free school accommodation or an annual rent allowance. And I spent 4 years in Qatar. And in that time, and now in my current stint in the UAE, I have managed to use that allowance, but rent well below the allowance, which has allowed me to save a lot more money each month.
Cool. And then where's Qatar? So for folks that are maybe are in the U.S. or not familiar with their world geography.
Of course. So you've got the Middle East, but we would call it more specifically the Gulf. So you've got countries like Saudi, United Arab Emirates, the UAE, where I'm currently now. You've got Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, and Kuwait. So they're probably the countries where you get a lot of your oil from, oil and natural gas. So they're quite wealthy countries. The first language is Arabic. And quite interestingly, they've got a huge number of English-speaking schools, quite a lot of American and British international schools. So they need American, South African, Irish teachers every year.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my wife and I were actually in the Middle East back in April, and we stopped in both on our way in and way out in Doha.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I spent 4 fantastic years there. Really, really enjoyed it. But to be honest, I hadn't heard of it until I got a job there. I had never heard of that country. So, but yeah, I ended up moving there.
Well, the only way we knew about it was from their airlines, which are just phenomenal. So we wanted to fly the airline. We're like, all right, well, let's stop in Doha. And then the Museum of Islamic Art was phenomenal. And then going into the souk, I think I'm pronouncing that right, was just, it was so amazing. Really love the country, and I'd love to go back. So let's really dig in. Like, how'd you end up traveling abroad? You said you've been doing this about 8 years. What started the idea? Where were you at in life, and why did you decide to make this change?
Yeah, so I finished my degree in Ireland, and I decided to go and train in the UK because the UK is a really good education system. It's very well renowned, but also I was quite lucky in the sense that my degree subjects were actually in demand in the UK. So they offered me a bursary or a grant to go and train in the UK. So I actually got my teaching qualification for nothing. And I also was able to use their grant to live off for the year, so pay my rent in the UK. So I trained in the UK, and then I worked there for a year after. And I worked in a place called Southend-on-Sea, which is just outside London. So I was paying London rent, but I unfortunately didn't qualify for any kind of special allowance. So I was probably spending well over 50% of my salary on rent. And I was enjoying it, but I didn't have enough money to go traveling. The school is fantastic, but there is a lot of emphasis on paperwork. I was spending a lot of my evenings, weekends, planning lessons, marking, etc. And I just felt that I really wanted to travel. I'd just come back. I'd been traveling in South America, and I just really wanted a job where I could still teach, but also travel and also save. And that's when I started exploring the world of expat teaching.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, and I'm about to say, if you're spending 50% of your income on rent, like, it's hard enough to get by doing that, let alone to do fun stuff like travel or go out for drinks with friends and everything.
Absolutely. And I was even living with a housemate. I wasn't even living on my own. But we were just on the fringe, the cusp of London. It was a very popular commuter town. So the rent was extortionate.
Yeah. All right. So here you are, you're paying high, almost 50% of your money on this sort of high cost of rent and living. You're deciding to go do something differently. How old were you roughly at this time?
I was 24, 25.
Okay. And now, how'd you decide on expat teaching? Like, did you know anyone that had done this before, or where'd you actually learn about it?
So I didn't actually really know anyone who'd taught abroad. My aunt had been a nurse abroad. She'd worked in Saudi and Oman and the United Arab Emirates in the 70s and 80s. So I had a relation who'd been abroad, so I wasn't afraid. There's a lot of misconceptions about the Middle East and the Gulf, but I knew that a lot of them weren't true because my aunt had a wonderful time. So I basically went on TES, which is the Times Education Supplement. It's like a website in the UK, and I looked at international jobs, and I sort of just looked at the different countries. I wanted somewhere that wasn't too far away, so it's still only a 6-7 hour plane ride home.
Yeah.
But also one that ideally tax-free salary, which is the Gulf offers tax-free salary, paid accommodation or rent allowance. And I applied for maybe a few different posts, and I managed to get at least about 3 or 4 jobs. And then when I got the contracts, I was able to read their contracts and compare and see which one was the best, worked out the best for me.
Yeah. All right. So you used that Time Education Supplement website to find them. You got multiple different contracts and offers. So were they all from the same country, different countries?
I had one from Qatar, and I think the rest were from the United Arab Emirates.
Okay. And why'd you decide specifically on the one with Qatar?
Initially, probably financially. The package was a lot better. Qatar was up and coming at the time. It really needed to attract teachers. People had never heard of it. People thought it was like an extension of Saudi Arabia that was very strict, very conservative, which it isn't. And I really liked the head teachers. That was the main reason. When I did the interviews, they really had a really great vision for the school. They were interested in Qatar. They gave such extra wonderful care. They met you at the airport. They gave you a SIM card. They gave you half your wages in advance, so you could, they organized a trip to go to the furniture store. They organized, they really took care of you. So based on that, I decided I would go with Qatar. Mainly for them, it was the money initially, but then also it was for the ethos of the school.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty amazing. Where, like, if you're going to a country you've never been to, let alone heard of before, and here they are, like, greeting you at the airport, helping you find the place to live, giving you the lucrative package with including housing, helping you take a trip to the furniture store. I mean, I imagine if you're moving, that's got to make it about as easy as it can be while still moving to another country. We're
so lucky as expat teachers because it is expected that your flights are paid for. So all I had to do was wait for the emails to send me my tickets, and then they should meet you really ideally when you land as well. So we're quite lucky in that sense. I know not every job abroad has that same treatment, but as teachers, we're quite lucky. They do take good care of us.
Yeah, that's great. So I know you'd mentioned your aunt had done some traveling nurse work before back in the 70s and 80s, but how would your family actually react to you saying like, okay, great, I've got this contract, I'm leaving, bye. Was there any hesitation or resistance there?
No, I'm quite lucky. My parents, they met in the UK, so they traveled quite a lot. So no, but I do think if my aunt hadn't been abroad, they probably would have been more worried.
Yeah.
But they knew that she loved it, and they knew that it wasn't as it is always portrayed in the media. And, and I think as well when they saw that I could have financial security, because that's actually a big factor as well. If I wanted to come back to teach in Ireland, it's very hard to get a permanent teaching contract. People tend to work for like 2-3 years on supply salaries, maternity covers, which means you actually don't have a permanent contract, so you can't get a mortgage. So when my parents saw there was job security, I was being taken great care of. They met me at the airport. They saw pictures. They even sent us pictures of my apartment where I would be living in Qatar, so I could show my family and friends where I'd be living, views of the sea, 2 bedrooms, brand new, modern. They were they were excited for me. So yeah, we wanted to come visit as well.
Yeah, that's great. So did they end up coming and visit when you were there?
They did, yeah, and they absolutely loved it. They were pleasantly surprised. I think people, when they first arrived, they think it's going to be so strict, but it's not at all. It was really, really open, and they loved it. But it's very hot.
Yes,
that took a while to get used to. Yeah, but when we arrived at the end of August, it was just about 45 degrees, and the heat hits you in the face when you come out of the airport like a hairdryer on full blast on your face. So that was a shock.
Yeah. All right, so you were there 4 years, and they had sort of the best package. Did they give you a stipend for housing, or was the apartment provided and they just paid for it?
Yeah, so which is quite common in schools. So initially, I had to take the apartment for the first year, which I feel makes sense, because it takes a while for your visa to be processed. So that means you can't go and get rent yourself while the visa is being processed. So my first year I had to live in the school accommodation, but it was a brand new 2-bedroom, ultra modern, clean, beautiful apartment. And we all had apartment blocks on the same block, but on different floors. So we immediately had a community, a support network around us. There was a pool, there was a gym in the mall. So that was really fantastic. So I had to live there for the first year. But in the second year, I was able to then take the allowance, which is what I did.
Yeah. So you had the 2-bedroom. Did you actually have to share that with someone else, or was the 2-bedroom all to yourself?
all for myself. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty awesome. Normally when I think like, oh, they're going to provide you housing, it's like some small, tiny little studio apartment, like bare bones. But you're saying this like had everything in it, the gym and the pool, and you had 2 bedrooms. So like you have room for a guest if family and friends want to come visit. That's pretty cool.
You probably could have rented out a room. At the time I didn't because I had visitors coming, but that would be a possibility, possibly.
All right. So you went from spending half of your income in the UK to now having a salary and all of your housing paid for. How did the salaries actually compare from your salary in the UK to there in Qatar? Was it equivalent, little less, little more?
I would say probably after tax, probably double.
Oh, wow.
It was double my salary after tax in the UK.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
so
then
it was amazing.
When you were in Qatar, were you gone enough? I don't know British and UK tax laws very well. Did you actually have to pay any tax back in Ireland or the UK for the income that you earned?
No, because it's a tax-free country, I don't have to pay tax in Ireland because I was out of the country long enough. I was out of the country for 4 years. Yeah, so I didn't have to pay any tax.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, in the U.S., they have that same thing. If you're gone for, I think it's 11 months out of a 12-month period, you don't have to pay tax on that foreign earned income. So, okay, I mean, this situation sounds like even better and better. It's like I was living in a good neighborhood, but had a commute, 50% of my income, and now I'm going and I'm living in this brand new, modern 2-bedroom place by myself that had all the amenities, and I'm getting paid more money, and I don't have to pay tax. I mean, that sounds like a pretty amazing situation.
And even better, in that first year as well, bills were included. So I didn't pay any bills. That was all included. So there was I didn't pay electricity. I just paid internet. That was it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a pretty good situation. So what'd you do with this extra like newfound money? Is this, did you use it to buy property back home? Did you use it to travel? Did you use it to just go out a lot more when you couldn't before? So
what I did was I've always been quite a good saver. So I sort of calculated everything that I was earning. And I thought, it's more money than I ever imagined I would be earning in my life at 25 years of age. As a teacher, we're not traditionally highly paid or anything. Yeah. So I decided then I wanted to save 100,000 euros before I turned 30. There's only 5,000 euros each year.
Yep.
So that was my aim. And I actually managed to do it at the time I was 29. So it took me about 4 years. Yeah, I still did my big trips. I went, on safari. I did lots of bucket list trips that I couldn't have done had I been back in the UK. So I did, went on safari. I went to the Great Wall of China. So I always traveled every holiday, but I made sure I balanced everything out. So I'd have a budget. I would only buy so much, on groceries. I'm not into designer labels. So, because sometimes people get caught up in that lifestyle where it's like branded goods and everything. Because my apartment was furnished, I didn't have to buy any furniture. And I used to always work in the summers in summer school to save extra cash as well. So I traveled and then I just saved. And then by the end of my 4 years in Qatar, I had 100,000 euros saved. And I was able to buy a 4-bed property in my town in Ireland because it was at the end of the recession. I mean, it was a huge economic recession in Ireland while I was in Qatar. And that really spurred me on to save even more because my family were affected by the recession. Yeah. And I just thought I never want to be in a position where I'm worrying about money. I never want to be in a position where I don't have my own property, I could ever be, without a home. So then I bought that four-bed semi-detached in my town, and I'm quite lucky. It's always been rented out ever since. Okay, so I bought that in cash.
You spent 4 years, you saved 100,000 euros, and then you also traveled did safari, went to go see the Great Wall of China. Like that sounds.
Went to Peru, Machu Picchu.
Oh my goodness.
Sri Lanka, Nepal.
That is so cool that you were able to do all of that. And then you went and bought a property in your hometown for cash. So you didn't even have to worry about the mortgage.
So it was perfect. And I also then had enough then to do the master's. I did a master's after my time in Qatar.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, okay. It just keeps getting, the longer we talk, the better and better it gets. It's like bought the property in cash, traveled all over the world, and was able to pay for the master's from it. Yeah. That is awesome. Okay, so you've got this 4-bedroom place back in Ireland. When you bought it, was it originally you planned to have it as like the home that you could always go back to, or was it purely I'm going to buy it as a investment property and always have it rented out?
I think it was initially with my heart, and it was the fact that I always wanted, even if everything turned upside down when I was abroad, I'd always have a home to go back to.
Yeah.
So that's why I bought. I probably was thinking more at my heart. In hindsight, as I look back, I probably would have bought. Now, thinking more logically, I probably would have bought 2 apartments. I think it would have been a better investment. But at the time, I mean, it is what it is. I can't.
Yeah.
You know, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But I was able to. Then that is quite a good source of monthly income for me. So initially, I bought it just in case to always have in Ireland to have a place to live.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to always have that place to go lay your head when you need it. You know, you can always go home. And since you bought it with cash, it's a place that's paid off. So you just have to worry about taxes and insurance and those things. And in the meantime, maybe if you're in between teaching contracts or want to take a little bit of a break, you've got this rental income that's coming in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's then when I did the master's, I had that coming in. But I also actually took a job teaching in the UK when I was doing my master's as well, because I didn't want to dip into my savings. So for me, it's always about balance. I'm always aiming to make sure I balance everything.
Yeah, that is amazing. All right, so you're wrapping up the 4 years in Qatar. You went back to the UK, did your master's, and now we obviously know you're in Dubai. You mentioned you were calling it from Dubai. So how'd you go from finishing your master's to going back to Dubai? Did you try to live in the UK for a little while and say like, hey, this just isn't good enough. I'm going to go back. I want the other lifestyle.
That's exactly what happened to me. So I spent 4 amazing years in Qatar, and I actually was able to even ramp up my savings towards the end in Qatar, because after my first year when I was school accommodation, they let me get the rent allowance in the second year. So in the second, third, and fourth year, I took the rental allowance. And then the second year, I actually lived in the same apartment. We moved in with a friend from school. And then I got a monthly rent allowance. I spent half on the rent, and the other half I could just save.
Oh, so you even saved money off of the rental allowance that you were getting?
Yeah, after my first year. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was able to.
Yeah. So that was amazing. And I did that for year 2, year 3. And then in year 4, they were changing the accommodation. So I took the allowance, and I actually took a lease out on a 3-bed property. And then I got housemates in, and they paid a bit extra. So I paid a bit less rent for my room.
Oh my goodness! So that 4th year, they were still giving you the housing allowance or stipend. So what was the total rent on that 3-bedroom place that you found?
It was 15,000 dirham, which I'm trying to just convert now and tell you in dollars. It was per month. It was $4,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and so then I think my housemates probably spent. I think they paid maybe $100 extra each. So I paid maybe $200 or $300 less.
Okay.
For my room.
Yep.
Yeah.
So between the money they were giving you and then the stipend that you had, your housing cost was still completely essentially free that 4th year.
Oh yeah. Well, I would have exactly. So my rent allowance at the time was 9,000 Qatari riyal, which was almost $2,500.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had money saved. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's really cool. So you left there, you finished your master's. Where'd you go next after that? Okay,
so I did my master's in London. So I always wanted, in my bucket list, I wanted to do a master's and I wanted to live in London. So I combined the two and applied to King's College London and went there. I had an amazing year. Absolutely loved it. And I have to say, London has a special place in my heart. I would go back there in a heartbeat, but only if I am wealthy. It's such a great city, but not if you're watching your pennies or, in a lower paid job. So I went back. I love being home. It was a great year. I turned 30 that year. I had weddings, lots of birthday parties for my friends who turned 30. So it was perfect. I could fly home to Ireland, every weekend. But I did miss the expat living. I missed the sun. I missed not paying rent. I missed having that good work-life balance. And so I knew by the time Christmas came, so I was back there for August, September, October, November, December, I thought, I'm ready to go back to the Gulf. I'm ready to go back to the Middle East or go back to the expat life. I'm not ready to come back yet to the UK. And so I started applying for jobs, and from the December, January onwards. And because I'd been abroad for those 4 years, I had a much better idea of what I wanted. I knew what I wanted in a package.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted like a school that had a rent allowance. I didn't want school accommodation because I knew I could save more off the rent allowance. So I had certain certain factors to consider when I was looking for jobs.
Great. And then how long now have you been back in Dubai?
I have been back now. This is my 4th academic year here. I hadn't expected to be here so long. I found it a little bit difficult in my first year or so. It's quite a big city and it can be quite anonymous. It hasn't got the same expat community that Qatar had. Yeah, it's much, much bigger. So that I found initially quite difficult to get used to. But that also actually influenced my property choices, because when I rented, I made sure for the first 2 places, first of all, my school gave me a rent allowance, and I got offered so many different contracts in my time when I was looking for jobs. I got offers from Senegal, from a school in Singapore, Shanghai, Oman, Qatar again, and then Dubai. But what I always did was I'd always look at the contract, see what kind of rental allowance they're offering me, and then I'd go on websites like Expatistan or I think it's Numbeo, and I'd check the cost of living. And I'd see, is what they're offering me, is that enough for a 1-bed in a nice part of town?
Yeah.
Or if I had contacts there, I knew expat teachers were there, I'd say, they're on the ground, I'd say, is this a decent amount for a rent allowance? Is this the norm? And then they would let me know yes or no, and then I'd either accept or turn down the job, depending on that. And so when I found the job that I loved, that suited me, and then also had a rent allowance, so then I moved here like 4 years ago. And my first year, I actually got a hotel apartment, which was brilliant. That was everything included. It's fully furnished and all bills were included.
Oh, yeah. And what was that rent, and how much was your stipend per month?
Yeah, so my rent allowance in total, including bills, it is 83,000 dirham, which for the year is about $22,600.
Okay.
And from that, I spent $20,000.
So you're actually, all right, so you're getting $22,600. You're living in a really nice place where everything's included and it's costing you about $20,000. So you're actually pocketing $2,600.
So in that first year, I pocketed less though than I'm doing now, but because the rent was higher, I guess I probably didn't know I could negotiate a bit more. But then as time went on, so then, for example, in my second year, I lived with a friend, and we again rented another hotel apartment, but because we were splitting it in 2. And another thing I did was I only took a 10-month contract, because once a place is fully furnished, I actually don't need to stay there over the summer because I don't have any furniture.
Oh, yeah.
So that was something we did. Yeah. So I always negotiated to get a shorter contract. And then in years 3 and 4, what I've done is rent properties have come down lots in Dubai, which is really amazing. And I find if you pay in one check, so rather than giving them 3 or 4 checks, if you say I'll pay it all at once, they usually give you a decent discount because they're happy to have a tenant in for 10 months.
And was it hard to negotiate a 10-month lease versus a 12-month?
No, at the moment, there's a lot of empty properties in Dubai. So landlords are usually quite happy to have people in.
And then what did you do for the other 2 months? Did you go back home? Did you travel? What were you doing?
Yeah, well, we're very lucky. And in the summer, we get 2 months off. So what I did was, I haven't that many things. I'm trying to lead more of a minimalistic lifestyle. So I packed what I could in like a few boxes in a big case, and I actually left it in my classroom store cupboard. We've got a huge store cupboard that's empty, during the summer because everyone's gone. So I left stuff in there, and I went home for the summer, and I always work in a summer school for July. So I have another job in July back in the UK. So I don't really touch my July salary at all. My July salary, we get paid holidays here. Okay. So I don't really touch my summer salary. I just live off the UK salary that I get from the summer school.
So you're saving even more money. Yeah. And then, it just sounds like this is a really amazing situation where like you're saving money on the stipend. When you were by yourself, you're saving even more. When you had the roommate, plus you're having the salary. And then in Dubai, was your income tax-free as well?
Yeah, it's still tax-free.
Yeah, I mean, that
which
just
is amazing.
Sounds like a really, really cool situation to be in. You're getting tax-free money, really healthy salary, great place to live. You get to be part of this expat community. So, you've been there 4 years now. I had also heard that you had bought a property in Spain at some point during this time. Can you talk about that a little?
Of course. So in my third year, so last year, I was still a little bit unsure about Dubai. And I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to go back to Europe. I love the sun, so I know I don't want to go back to Ireland. So I decided to go buy a property in Spain because it's near Ireland. I can fly back to my family, but it's also, I want to live on a beach, and I speak some Spanish, so I want to go somewhere where I can speak Spanish. And so I bought a property, a 3-bed apartment in a beautiful town called Denia. And it's very funny. How I discovered it, I sort of put a post on Facebook. I said, hi, Facebook friends, I'm thinking about buying in Spain. Any suggestions? And people just got in touch with me and sent me private messages and, give me some suggestions. And I researched a bit and I found Denia. And it's funny, ever since now I bought my property, I actually find there's a lot of people who are maybe house hackers or people who've retired early or Americans who want a cheaper place to live. They actually go there. So it's quite funny. Then I said, oh, really? It's actually quite popular with expats. So I bought a 3-bed property there for 70,000 euros about a year and a half ago. And it's got a big balcony, a big terrace. I'm about a 7-minute walk from the beach and marina. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah.
And did you buy the property cash or were you able to get a mortgage for it?
What I did was I had savings. I half saved and then I took a half out here for the other half and then paid it off as quick as I could.
Well, was it hard to get a loan for the other half because you were living abroad and didn't have any local income in the EU?
I actually took it a loan from UAE, a bank in the UAE in Dubai.
Oh, so did they put a lien against the property or they said, hey, we know you're working here, we'll just give you the loan? And
exactly. Once you get a contract and you have to get a letter from your employer as well.
Okay.
So that shows that your employer plans to keep you because, we do work on a year-to-year contract. And that's something I would say to people to be very careful. Some people take huge loans. My loan was about 35,000 euros, which is quite manageable to pay back. But expats can get into trouble if they take huge mortgages here and buy at home, and then maybe they lose their job here. You can end up in jail. So I'd be very careful about taking loans.
Yeah. But it sounds like you were really smart of I paid for half of it with savings and then the other half was really small and manageable and where you could pay it back pretty quickly.
Exactly. And I'd savings. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, it sounds like you've had these really cool 8 years as an expat teacher. So what's coming up next for you? What are you planning on doing?
So, I'm still in Dubai. Surprisingly, I hadn't expected to be here so long. I'm really enjoying it. I definitely settled in a lot more. I also have an online community of expat teachers called Empowering Expat Teachers, and I kind of work on that. It's like a forum where teachers can ask each other questions. I also do a CV and cover letter sort of services as well. So I'm hoping to expand that side of my business in the future. I still have lots of places on my bucket list. I haven't been to Jordan yet. I haven't seen Petra. I haven't been to Australia or New Zealand yet. So I'm making my way through the countries as I go along. But yeah, I have to say the way I'm feeling now, I'm not as much in a rush to go back as I previously was. So I don't think I'll be going back. I said maybe 2 more years in Dubai, but I've just come back, like I said to you, from Vietnam, and I really was impressed with Ho Chi Minh City. And that sort of made me think twice about my plan to go home in the next few years. So I'm still researching other places. There's still lots of amazing places. And the packages in Asia are actually probably at the moment, a little bit more attractive than some places in the Gulf.
Oh, so you think you'll just go and take another teaching package in Asia so you can spend more time there?
Possibly. Either that or go back to Europe.
Okay. Yeah, well, it sounds like you're in a pretty good position though. Like you've got now 2 rental properties, one back in Ireland, one in Spain. You've been saving quite a bit of money while also still traveling all around the world and knocking bucket lists off your item. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'll also be sure for anyone listening, we're going to put the website she mentioned in the show notes. That way folks can find them, and we'll have that up on the website just after this episode airs. So, a couple, I guess maybe 3 questions for you to sort of wrap up this brief section is, thinking back through this 8-year period where you're living abroad and getting free housing, what do you feel like your biggest success was from that time period?
I would say probably this year is probably my best year in terms of house hacking. Again, it's a learned experience. And the longer you are here, the more tips and tricks you pick up. This year, I've actually saved just under $8,000 on my rental allowance.
Oh my goodness.
It's the most I've ever saved. It is thanks in part to rent prices going down. But I did things like I got a studio instead of a 1-bed. So I made sure I rented a studio. I also got a fully furnished studio because, again, I'm not sure how long I'm going to be here. So it's great to I don't have to worry about selling off furniture. I negotiated. So I said, I set up kind of a 10-month contract. And because I knew I'd sort of like the upper hand in terms of, there's a lot of empty property, I was able to negotiate to get a decent discount on my rent. And I made sure that bills were included. So based on that, I'm just saving about $7,900 on my rent allowance, which I'm really, really happy with. It's gone up steadily every year, but this year has been the best, I think, so far.
That sounds like a really big win. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's amazing because not only am I getting free rent, I'm actually saving it as well. And I do have to say, I say to everyone all the time, people think it can't be done. It really can. I live in a really nice area of Dubai. I haven't compromised on where I live. I wanted to live in somewhere nice, somewhere with a lot of expats. Loads of my good friends live around me. It's like got coffee shops, it's got bars, it's got lakes you can walk around, little pathways. Like it's, I mean? I still it's still beautiful, but it's
not a sacrifice.
Exactly. I don't compromise.
Yeah, that's great that you compare both of those. All right, so then what do you feel your biggest challenge was? Or is there anything, looking back at the past 8 years, that if you could go back and change it or do it differently, would you?
I wouldn't change anything I've done. Absolutely not. I've enjoyed every second of it. I would say probably in terms of, I'm very proud of, my achievements and what I've done, but probably in hindsight, in terms of my properties that I bought with my savings, I probably thought a little bit more with my heart than my head.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I probably would have thought more in turn. I still get rental income, but I instead of a 4-bed house, I probably would have bought 2 apartments, for example. And the place in Spain, it's a fantastic, and I love it because it's where I would like to live eventually. Because my circumstances and plans have changed. At the moment, I'm sure you've heard of Brexit.
Oh, yes.
And the property market in Spain is so slow at the moment because all the expats are afraid to do anything. Because there's loads of British expats in Spain, and because they're not sure of what's going to happen, they're not actually going to Spain to rent for the winter. So that's been, it's been hard to rent it out. Yeah. So but I bought it in cash, so it's not costing me. I don't have to worry about it. But in terms of that, I probably would have bought another apartment in Ireland in hindsight. So probably I would have thought a bit more with my head than my heart.
Yeah. And then would you do it all over again?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sounds like you're also thinking about doing it again in Asia.
Yeah. I go through periods where I think maybe I should go back home, maybe I should do this. But a good friend of mine, she has she writes amazing blog posts, and she said, when people ask her, when do you plan to go home? Or when do you plan to leave your current expat location? She says, when it stops making me happy. And I think that's what I'm going to start thinking of, rather than be like, oh, maybe I should do this because X, Y, Z or convention or whatever. Now I think, no, I will leave it when I'm no longer happy.
Yeah.
Rather than, constantly saying, oh, one more year.
Yep.
So that's my new mantra.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. But before we let you go, I like to ask all of our guests this set of final 6 questions, the rapid fire questions that we like to call
the famous 6.
Are you ready for it?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So what is your favorite personal finance blog or book that you've read recently?
Millionaire Expat by Andrew Hallam.
Oh, okay. I'll put that in the show notes for everyone. That's definitely a good one. And then, when you bought these two properties, did you do any real estate related reading? If so, what's your favorite real estate related blog or book that you've read?
Sadly, I discovered this after I bought my properties, but I really love the Bigger Pockets.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and their book on rental property investing.
So do you find it actually translates pretty well to the EU and UK, where I know it, from at least my perspective, being here in the US, it feels like it's very North America heavy. Do you find that there's good like sub forums and a lot of that knowledge translates to different countries?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it gives you sort of like alternatives to think about that I wouldn't have thought about before myself, because I haven't really found very many that are more like European or Irish centered. So it does make me think, and also maybe interested in maybe possibly getting into investing in the American property market, maybe in the future.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to number 3, what's been your favorite travel destination you've been to so far?
Only because I was there yesterday, Vietnam. It's been absolutely amazing. It surpassed all my expectations.
Awesome. And then what's next on your travel list? Or since you just got back, are you thinking of the next place you want to go to?
Yes. At the end of November, I've got a long weekend, and I'm thinking to go to Jordan and to go Dead Sea and Petra.
Yeah. My wife and I, when we did our Middle East trip, it was Qatar, Egypt, and Jordan. And we did Dead Sea Resort. We went down to Wadi Rum. And then, of course, we did Petra. And when we were in Wadi Rum, we stayed in one of those bubble dome tents that was clear. So at night, you could see all the stars. It was amazing. And then in Petra, we spent 3 days there. It was so beautiful. I mean, it's amazing. You'll have a good time if you go.
Yes, I can't wait.
Yep. All right. And then, what is the biggest bucket list item that you haven't accomplished yet?
I really want to achieve financial independence in the next 2 years or so. So I'm on the way, but I'm not quite there yet.
Cool. And you think you're maybe 2 years away?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Well, even if you're off by a year and it's 3 years, that's still pretty cool that you're only like 2 to 3 years away from it.
That's true. The cost of living in Europe is very low, you see. That helps.
Yeah, it definitely helps. All right. And then number 6 is, do you have a favorite life hack you'd like to share with us?
This life hack probably happened by accident, but this is terrible. I'm like in my 30s and I still haven't gotten my full driving license yet. And that has been actually, I think I probably managed to save lots by not having a car. And so like carpooling or I think I probably saved tons.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't feel so bad. My wife is in her 30s as well, and she has yet to get her driver's license.
Oh, I'm not the only one.
No. She always just grew up in big cities, right? So, in the U.S., she grew up in Minneapolis and then went to school in Boston. And, there's public transportation. You can walk everywhere. And now we're in New Orleans, same thing. There's a streetcar, there's public transportation, especially as Uber's gotten bigger. The few times that she does need to go somewhere where there isn't public transportation, yours Uber. So I would say the same thing. She's probably saved quite a bit of not having to worry about a car and insurance and all that fun stuff. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again for being on the show. We really, really appreciate it. I mean, your story was it's incredible. The fact that over this 8-year period, you were able to save so much money. You're able to buy properties in 2 different countries and not make a sacrifice, live in really cool places and travel all around the world. So thank you again for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Andrew. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the House Hacking Podcast. For more up-to-date information on house hacking, to access links and resources mentioned in today's show, and connect with a guest and host, head over to www.fibrei.com. That's www.fibrei.com, where your house hacking journey begins.